Hey guys, good to see you again. All right, well, today what we're going to do is first we're going to once again have a quiz on our life zones and on the plants that live in the life zones. And then we are going to learn one more plant for each life zone. And then I'm going to talk with you about some more ideas for drawing so that when it's drawing time today, you'll have some new things to try while you're drawing. So first, our life zone review. What's this top life zone? Anyone? Yes? The spruce fir life zone. Okay, the next one down below the spruce fir life zone. The second life zone is the mixed conifer life zone. And below the mixed conifer life zone we have the, named after a tree, ponderosa pine life zone. And finally on the bottom, named after two trees, the pinon juniper life zone. Okay, back up to the top. Here we are again in the spruce fir life zone, and I taught you these two plants that live in the spruce fir life zone. One of them is a deciduous tree that loses its leaves. The other is a sort of shaggy, droopy member of the spruce family with a very hard to remember name. So we have the aspen tree, my favorite tree. And then with the aspen tree, we have the Engelmann spruce, Engelmann, named after someone named Engelmann. Got a tree named after him. Pretty cool. Okay, now let's go down to the mixed conifer life zone, where I showed you these two plants. The first one wasn't even a conifer, and the second one most definitely is a conifer, a very important conifer because we get wood for building things with it. They are the, do you remember what these are? The one with the curvy leaves. The one with the good wood for building. The curvy leaf one is the gamble oak, and the one with the really good wood for building is the Douglas fir. It sounds like it should live in the spruce fir life zone, and it gets up there too, but it's a very big deal here in the mixed conifer life zone. Then going down one more life zone, we have a tree and we have a grass. This is the ponderosa pine life zone, so the name of the tree should be easy to remember because it is the ponderosa pine. And how about the grass? It's not uncle grass, it's not mama grass, it's not brother grass. It's grandma grass, not grandma, grandma grass, blue grandma, the one grass that we've talked about. And then down here in the pinon juniper life zone, this should really be the easy one. What are these two plants I've shown you in the pinon juniper life zone? They are the pinon and the juniper. How easy can that be? All right, now a new plant for each life zone. Back to the top. Up here in the spruce fir alongside our aspen and our Engelmann spruce, I'm going to introduce another plant to you. It is the cork bark fir, I like the cork bark fir quite a bit. It's called the cork bark fir because if you go up and you press on the bark, it's a little spongy. Like instead of being hard like some bark or maybe a little like crispy and flaky like some bark, it's spongy. Like you can push on it and it gives a little bit and then it comes back. So the cork bark fir is in the fir family like the Douglas fir, and it's got this really cool bark. So next time you're up on the mountains, go pushing on the trees until you find one that you can push in a little bit. That's your cork bark fir. So that's going to be our new member of the spruce fir family. Then we go down to the next life zone, the mixed conifer life zone. And gosh darn it if I don't have another tree that's not a conifer for you. Yeah, it's this one right here, the Rocky Mountain maple. Yes, it's in the maple family where maple syrup comes from. And in fact, you could get syrup from these trees, but they don't grow as big as the ones that grow in the eastern United States and eastern Canada that most of our maple syrup comes from. But they do have tasty maple sap that you could tap in the spring. The reason we love our Rocky Mountain maples here in New Mexico is, like the Gamble oak, they're beautiful in the fall. Their trees turn these fabulous red colors in the fall. And if you've ever been to 4th of July Canyon, 4th of July Canyon has a lot of Rocky Mountain maples growing in it, and it is so gorgeous in the fall. You should go. It's very nice. And then going down another life zone into the ponderosa pine life zone, we're going to talk about the mountain mahogany. The mountain mahogany is another, it looks like a deciduous plant because it has leaves, but it doesn't really drop many of them in the winter. It keeps a lot of them. Its leaves are really tiny. They're really waxy because now we're getting down into the, lower parts of the desert where it starts to get kind of hot and dry. And having waxy leaves is a really good idea because if your leaves are sort of waxy, it's harder for water to evaporate out of your leaves. So the mountain mahogany, by having small leaves and by having waxy leaves, helps to deter evaporation so that it doesn't lose water as quickly. And so it can last a long time in a place where there's not quite as much rain, which is why it likes growing down low. But now we're going to go really down low to the Pinon Juniper life zone. And in the Pinon Juniper life zone, our new plant is going to be this very famous plant, the state flower of New Mexico. You probably already know it. It is our good friend, the yucca plant. Very distinctive plant, very famous in the state of New Mexico. All right, so now you have 4 life zones, 3 plants for each life zone. You've learned a lot of stuff. Now let's talk a little bit more about art. I've been looking over all of your drawings and they're starting to look pretty cool. I've seen some pretty good stuff. What I wanted to talk to you about today are different ways of thinking about how to represent something. Now, when you represent something, that's just showing it. If you're drawing something, you're representing it. And we've been doing drawings of these plants that live in these different life zones. But what I haven't really talked about is some of the different ways that artists have approached drawing. We're going to talk a little bit today about something called abstraction. And abstraction is when you take something and you make it less and less real than it really looks. So for example, let's take a look at this painting by a New Mexico painter named Wilson Hurley. In this painting by Wilson Hurley, he has painted a mesa here in New Mexico. And it looks pretty real. Like that mesa, that looks like a mesa. The plants growing around it look like real plants growing around it. This is what we would call a realistic painting. It's not abstract at all. It's very realistic. It almost looks like something you could photograph. Like you could maybe mistake this painting for a photograph. Yeah, it's that good. But now let's take a look at this painting here. Now this painting is also a painting of a mesa. And you can tell. It's by a famous Arizona painter named Ed Mell. And you can see it's also pretty real looking, but not quite as real looking as Wilson Hurley. It doesn't look like it could be confused for a photograph. You can tell it's not a photograph for sure. But it still looks pretty real. You can tell it's a mesa. You maybe even could go out into the desert and hike around for a while, and if you came along this mesa, you'd be like, hey, that's the mesa in that painting. You'd be able to recognize it. But now let's look at this painting of a mesa. This is a painting by a woman named Vanita Doyle. And you can tell it's a mesa, but I bet the mesa doesn't really look like that. Like, looking at this mesa, it's like, was it really that red? Was the ground really that blue? Were they really both shaped quite like that? Probably not. This person is starting to do some abstraction. It's certainly more abstract than this one by Ed Mell, which is only a little bit abstract. And it's way more abstract than this one by Wilson Hurley, which is really not abstract at all. But this one by Vanita Doyle is starting to get pretty abstract. You can definitely tell not only is it a painting, but that she's really changed a lot of things about what the mesa really looks like through your eyeballs. It's still good. It's still a cool painting. I still like it, but it's more abstract. Now take a look at this painting of a mesa. This is by a painter named Randy Patton. And the only reason I know it's a painting of a mesa is because he says so in the name of the painting. But besides that, I really wouldn't be able to tell. What he's done is he's taken the idea of a mesa, like the colors, and some of the lines and shapes, and he's painted those bits, but he hasn't really painted the mesa trying to make it look like a mesa looks through your eyes, or like a mesa would look through a camera. It's still a mesa. Because he was using a mesa to give him his ideas, but he has abstracted it a lot. He has abstracted it so far that a lot of people would have absolutely no idea that it was a mesa unless you told them. So this is a very abstract painting of a mesa. So what I did is I took one of our pictures, this picture here of Douglas fir cones, and I decided to try to draw it on Seesaw in a kind of a realistic way, but then I decided to try to do it in some abstract ways. It just so happens that one of the students in one of our classes, a girl named Clara, who's a second grader in my class, also has a pretty cool version of this that's the most abstract one of all. So here's the first one I did. You can see I'm using all the tricks I was teaching you, and I've tried to make it pretty real. I tried as much as I could to draw what it looks like in the picture. It doesn't really, no one would confuse this with being a photograph, but they would definitely be able to look at it and go, oh yeah, look at those pine cones. You know, that looks like pine cones and pine needles on a tree. But now look at this one. You can still tell it's pine cones and pine needles on a tree, but I've done some abstracting here. You know, I've made the needles really super straight, all in this really organized pattern, and I've made the pine cones out of these very precise shapes, all arranged next to each other. I've still used the same tricks. You can see I did the needles, and then I went back over the needles with another color, and I did the pine cone, and I went back over the pine cones with shapes in the same color but a different version of that color. I'm still using the same tricks I taught you, but I've made it more abstract. You can definitely tell it's pine cones and pine needles, but I'm not trying to be to make it look real. I'm abstracting it. And same thing here. Here's the third one I did, and also very abstract. It's more curvy than that first one, and I'm still using all the same tricks. And you can still tell it's pine cones and pine needles, but it's abstract. I'm not trying to make it look real. It's recognizable, but it's not what things really look like in nature. And now let me show you this one, the one that Clara did the last time we were drawing. You can tell, because we were in the room with Clara, we know which picture she's doing, but she has abstracted the pine cones especially quite a bit, and it looks totally cool. It's a really cool abstract of the pine cones and the pine needles. Now, maybe someone who doesn't know what we're doing and doesn't know the kinds of things that we're painting, they might not be able to tell. But all of us who've seen the picture, we know which one she's doing. And she's done a really cool version of it. So when you look at all four of these, you can see this range that we can get of the kind of art we can do between something that looks more real and something that looks more abstract. And so I wanted to show these to you to give you some more ideas so that today, when you're drawing, you can try some different ideas so that when we actually hang all of our drawings on the walls in the art gallery, they don't all kind of look like we're all trying to do the same thing. That it looks like some of us are approaching the drawing in really different kinds of ways. So some of you will prefer doing the ones that look more real, but some of you might prefer doing the ones that look more abstract. And so give it a try today. Try to do some that are real. Try to do some that are abstract so that you can experiment with different kinds of representation and see which one you would like to do when it's time for us to finally do our official drawings for this project. All right, so I look forward to seeing the cool real and abstract drawings that you do of our plants today, and I'll see you at the next lesson.